Hello there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Two Maesters. Got something to tell you. In the grim darkness of YouTube, there's only the Two Maesters and the NSA stealing your data. Lol. Welcome back, wonderful viewers. Boy, am I excited today. I know I always start the podcast with that, but today I'm especially excited. You know why? Because today on the Two Maesters, we're going to talk about Warhammer 40,000! Woo! Oh yeah, super excited. This is what made me a nerd. This is the nerdiest thing about me, and I don't care.
I can't believe I gave up a night of drinking for this.
Oh, trust me, I'll be drinking after this after dealing with you. So, as you know, it's my wonderful co-host, Josh Number One. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Just coming back from Edinburgh. Funnily enough, there was an actual games workshop, Warhammer shop in Edinburgh that I did pass, and I was thinking to myself that, yeah, we do need to do this episode, and I think especially with the news about Henry Cavill being in an Amazon TV show, and also I've really been into like the Total War Warhammer games, especially the third one, especially with the new expansion with the Chaos Dwarves as well.
Oh yeah.
So I've been playing that. But I'd love to know more about like the 40K universe and how the actual like fantasy universe relates to the 40K universe as well.
Yeah, we can delve into that. There's a bit of a weird, tenuous link. But first of all, Josh Number Two, how you doing?
Living the dream.
That's all you got to say?
Well, I did say I've given up a day of drinking. So, I mean, there's only so much energy I can put into this.
Your liver thanks you. Your liver thanks you.
But yeah, so I think we should probably start with like, what's everyone's level of knowledge of Warhammer 40K? So what would you say your level of knowledge is, Josh Number Two?
Probably uncomfortably more than it should be.
I know, it's sad really, isn't it?
I mean, so I guess my first interaction with Warhammer was when I was, 11, 12? Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine brought it into school with him, and that's it. Like, there's a reason why they call it plastic crack. It's because once it gets you, that's it. You're hooked. So I played the tabletop. I've read books. I've watched the animations. I've taken many hours going down a rabbit hole looking at the lore. I've played the games. I am really excited to see what Henry Cavill gets up to with Amazon. I am absolutely blown away by Warhammer. I'm not sure why. Hopefully we might dig into that a bit today, but I love it.
Yeah, maybe there's a psychology about it. I don't know. Josh Number One? I can't remember. Are you Josh Number One?
Yes, what's your level? Josh here. So number one. It's the number one here. Thank you very much. I think for me, Warhammer was very, very late. I think, like, for me growing up, everything was like, oddly enough, I was more towards like the medieval type fantasy. So like Lord of the Rings was the focus. Then also you had like Chronicles of Narnia going in there as well. You later on, like in my teenage years, was like The Witcher, reading on the books, and then playing the first game that I couldn't finish because like I played the first game of The Witcher really, really late, just before like the second game came out. So then playing that, and then you're like all other games around, like how quirky it was, how slow it was. Yeah. So I was more like a medieval fantasy, but then like Mass Effect came in, so then it kind of opened the door a bit for like sci-fi fantasy in a space opera setting, and like I think I then like took like a break because then there wasn't a lot of like I was just hooked on like The Witcher 3 and Elder Scrolls for years on end, so that took up my downtime. But then when I saw like Total War was doing like a Warhammer game, I was like, wow, this just actually looks really good. And I really got into the first one, so I got the second one and the third one. And I think also like the last expansion, which is focusing on like the Chaos Dwarves and also on Chaos taking over the whole world. Traitors. And I think I've really enjoyed the world, and like I've never really delved into 40K, so I think one of the cool things is to actually understand like the 40K universe. I did like watch a YouTube video on it, and it's basically set in our timeline but way in the future.
What do you mean, our timeline in the future?
It's like, because you've got like Star Wars, which is like a universe that's separate to our own, but then you've got like stuff like Mass Effect, and Star Trek, which are kind of set in our universe, but it's like sci-fi set in our universe.
Right, okay, so there's
set in the
Earth,
future.
there's Earth, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I see what you mean. I was about to say, this is getting trippy already. Holy cow.
It's going to be a long night.
Well, you're welcome to walk out the door. You know where the door is, mate.
You've locked it, though. That's
There's no leaving. So, it's sort of like summary, I think, of what Warhammer is in like the real world before we dive into the lore. So, Warhammer is a tabletop miniature war game produced by Games Workshop. And boy, do they make dollar. Oh, they make so much money. Players battle in a grimdark science fiction / fantasy universe using superhuman warriors, aliens, tanks, monsters, etc. It's like a blend of science fiction and fantasy. You get space elves, you get space orcs, you get space Nazis. You know, there's always room for Nazis in every lore, isn't there? It's epic. It's amazing.
I'm not sure Games Workshop appreciate you describing their faction
yes,
as space
yes,
Nazis.
yeah.
I can feel their lawyers just...
Yeah.
And all that ka-ching you've just said, I think they're starting to think how many they could potentially lose.
Don't worry, Games Workshop. You'll still be good. We love you. Hashtag, we're not making money out of this yet. We should really get some sponsors. So there's different variations. You know, you've got Warhammer 40,000, which is big battles with army-sized groups, which can take anywhere between 2 to 4 hours. You've got Kill Team, which is like smaller tactical teams of maybe 10 men, which takes maybe up to an hour. You've got Apocalypse battles, which are just absolutely gigantic, ginormous, huge battles. You need to rent out a church hall and gather all the nerds in the area to play this because they're huge.
The Pied Piper of plastic.
Yeah. Why is it Pied Piper? Why do I keep hearing people referencing this? Why is it Pied Piper?
It's a fairy tale about this guy this village had rats, so they hired the Pied Piper to basically get the rats to disappear. So he plays his pipe, and the rats basically
pipe bombs?
No, the instrument.
Right, okay.
And then the rats follow him and then leave the town. But when it's time to pay him, they're like, well, you've got rid of the rats, so we don't have a rat problem anymore. So sod off, mate. So he basically says, all right, then, I'm then going to take all your children and disappear with them. And I think only like one child who I believe might have been disabled isn't able to then go. So all the children in the whole town have been taken away. And it's like one of those, those old fables which basically try and has a moral lesson to it that if you agree to then pay someone, then you should actually go through with it, or if not, there will be consequences type thing. It's like a Brothers Grimm type story.
Fair enough. Well, I should definitely probably pay that phone bill very soon then. Anyway, moving swiftly on. So, we talk about Warhammer 40,000, but as Josh number 1 has said, that there's also the spin-off fantasy genre, which was what Games Workshop and Warhammer was originally. So, basically, Games Workshop was founded in 1975, and I don't know what you call it, what do you call a company that's like a part of something else?
Conglomerate, corporation, subsidiary?
Yeah, a subsidiary of Games Workshop's called Citadel Miniatures, which originally started out making figurines for Dungeons and Dragons, when enough back in the day. This is the very early days before Games Workshop started its own lore and fantasy brand. And the first Warhammer 40,000 edition came out in 1987. So it's very much a homegrown fantasy science fiction genre. And let's not forget that there's also the Lord of the Rings edition, which came out in like the early noughties, which I haven't done any research on because, quite frankly, I don't know many people that play that edition. But still cool if you're a big Lord of the Rings nerd, which we are on this show. So I think it's time we delve into the lore. So I think to give a really good summary of the lore, we've got to say that I think Warhammer 40,000 encapsulates this genre most, the grim dark. So here's a little dramatic reading that might start things off. Let's see how intensely I can get into this. It is the 41st millennium. For more than 100 centuries, the emperor of mankind has sat immobile on the golden throne of earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods and a master of a million worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass, writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed every day so that he may never truly die. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. These are the tales of those times. Forget the power of technology and science, for so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grim dark future, there is only war. There is no peace amongst the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. Thank you very much, audience.
Sounds a lot like our childhood.
Yeah, exactly. So what are our first initial thoughts of that amazing dramatic reading? Thank you very much.
I think, like, one thing it did remind me of is that just rereading through it was like potentially like a dark age took place. Like the fact, because like recently announced all the Total War heads out there that they're releasing like a Pharaoh Total War, which is about the Bronze Age collapse, and like historians and scientists have been like, if like Dark Ages hadn't happened with human history, how far ahead could we have potentially been? Like you had the Bronze Age collapse, you had the Dark Age in Europe when Rome fell, and then many technologies weren't realized until like the 1800s during the Victorian era. So reading that just seems like potentially a point in time where humanity had reached like the pinnacle of its existence. And then the issue is whether it's sci-fi, whether it's fantasy, when an empire gets to the top and gets to the pinnacle, there is a downward trend that always seems to happen. And something has to come and then cause an end. And I think that's what probably comes in with 40K.
Yeah, I mean, could you elaborate on that, Josh? I think he's hit the nail on the head pretty well.
Yeah, so essentially what you've got is Warhammer 40,000 is living in the shadow of Warhammer 30,000. So Warhammer 30,000 is when the Emperor of Mankind effectively revealed himself to humanity. He is probably the most psychic, powerful being in the universe.
Okay.
He can be all things to all people. He is the most charismatic, strongest being in existence. And he has stayed quiet throughout human history. So they think they think that he's related to Genghis Khan in some way.
No, he's actually Turkish, I think. He's like born in Anatolia, but let's not delve into that too deeply.
The point is, he predates history. He's been there, but he's been in the background as a warlord in some places, as an advisor in others. And essentially, humanity goes through a period where it pollutes the entire planet. Everything descends into anarchy, and you have what they're called techno-barbarians. So you've got these like Mad Max-style people with lasers fighting each other all over a ruined globe.
And the climate's destroyed, the world's oceans are gone, nuclear weapons are used.
Yeah, so the Emperor quietly builds up an army, and they have what they call the Unification Wars. So he basically unleashes the Thunder Warriors, which are like the proto-Space Marines.
Okay.
And he unites all the warring tribes of Earth. Then we get to the year 30,000, and he essentially decides that... So you have, predating the Techno-Barbarian period, you've got the golden age of technology, and that's when mankind is truly above all others, and technology is amazing, the quality of life is amazing. But then you have in the background, you have another species called the Eldar, which are the space elves. They, through a basic mixture of depravity, torture, indulgence, like the fall of Rome, essentially, bring another chaos god, which we'll get to, into existence, called Slanesh.
Yeah, I know Slanesh from the Total War games. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. See, this is where it links.
The god.
Yes.
They bring him into existence. Bit of a fail there, and that unleashes what they call, I think, a big warp storm, and essentially humanity falls apart, and you have then the dark age of technology, which is basically everything goes dark, and you then have the Titan of Barbarians. So the Emperor comes back and says, right, we now need to reconquer the stars and reconnect with all our human colonies that are that were part of the human empire during the golden age of technology, because he sees that actually the only way that man can prosper and save itself from aliens, heretics, etc., is through conquest. There are no good guys in Warhammer. It is just degrees of grey. Even the good guys, absolute bastards.
There you go, beeped out. Just in time.
So he unleashes a crusade, and to lead his armies, he creates the Primarchs, which are these super beings that he's genetically crafted. So are the Space Marines, but they're sort of like cheap, replaceable. Although when I say cheap and replaceable, these guys are like gods among men. But the Primarchs are their
superhumans,
leaders, And the Grim Darknesses, they refer to themselves as his sons, and the Emperor just thinks, you're just tools. And he creates each Primarch for a particular purpose in his new empire. And we can delve into more detail, but essentially the greatest of them is Horus, who he refers to as the War Master. And he was meant to be the diplomat, the political leader, but he gets corrupted by chaos, and he leads a rebellion, and readily half his army and half the Primarchs turn against the Emperor, and you get this civil war. And that's what Warhammer 30,000 is about. It's about the civil war, and there's a whole series of books that goes into that. Anyway, so cut story short.
Thank you.
This is the problem with Warhammer. It's just so big, and we're only talking about one faction here. One faction. We're not talking about all the sub-factions of that one faction.
The lore is so deep and rich, and like Josh said, shades of grey. Like we a lot of this series we talk about on this, we're always like, yeah, we love it. It's dark. It's shades of grey. Like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon,
Witcher, Dune as well.
Yeah, Dune. Yeah, and the lore. We could just keep going on about it, but as you were saying, humanity peaks in technology, and then it goes through a dark age, and that is very much what happens. There's mankind spreads across the stars, but then the birth of that chaos god shrouds everything in like some storm that disconnects everyone communications-wise, and mankind descends into basically civil war. And like things like guns become like somewhat of a rarity because technology is failing, so people go back to fighting with swords and weapons and melee combat. Very similar to Dune. So that's why there's sort of a grim darkness, because literally it's the 41st millennium, the 31st millennium, and there are guns. People are using guns, but they also use nasty up close and personal swords and chain swords. It's pretty crazy. Now, we're talking about, there's a lot of factions in this. We know about the Imperium of Man. It's a galaxy-spanning interstellar human empire, the ultimate authority for the majority of human species in the Milky Way galaxy in the 41st millennium, is ruled by the living god, the Emperor, known as the Emperor of Mankind. It is a theocratic fascist regime. Religion plays a massive role in the Imperium in it. Does that sound familiar to anything to you, maybe?
Yeah, it does. And I think one thing that's kind of... It's always weird, like, when you have, like, things that are set in the future, when it's like an empire, it always seems to take from the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And I think, like, because at points that, especially in the highest period of, like, the Roman Empire, was when they were pumping into the people that the emperor is actually a god in and of himself, either a son of Zeus or potentially one of the Hellenic pantheon. And I think one of the things that you do hear about that is that potentially that was probably the weird thing is that the Rome as a republic was corrupt, but the highest point in Rome was with an emperor, with one leader, and then those following that said leader. And then that's like got people thinking, like theologians and also people in politics today saying, is it that democracy will work for a stage, but then start to clog up with people looking for their own benefits? But then potentially if you have one person in charge who can make decisions, who potentially make decisions for the best of the people, whether they're good or bad, as in morally, but because of the stability that then brings, does society then continue to grow? Because it's like, you look at Rome wouldn't have been nowhere as successful if they stuck with their whole republican system.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it reaches a point where like it's a republic, then eventually someone takes over as emperor, and then that reaches its peak, its zenith, when it's under an imperial rule.
Yeah, and like, I think someone was saying that, which was weird, because my friend was saying that if like Augustus Caesar or Julius Caesar, even though Julius Caesar was an emperor, what was his title again? I think he was dictator for life. That's what the title he wanted to have. And that if he potentially would have basically, they made him immortal and then he ruled over the empire for thousands of years, then that would technically be what Warhammer 40K is.
The god Emperor Julius Caesar.
I mean, it meshes together a lot of properties. So there's a big dollop of the Catholic Church in there.
Yeah, definitely the Roman Empire. Yeah.
Dune.
Big
Lord
time.
of the Rings.
Okay.
Because you've got orcs, space orcs.
It's quite.
They are the orcs.
Yeah, and then
with
the
more
Eldar.
comedy. The elves. Who else you got?
Tau, but they're more of like a very unique thing, aren't
So
they?
the
They're
Tau
like
were
space
brought
samurai.
in for the sort of Japanese market, because they've got like anime and mecha and stuff like that.
You've got the Necrons, who, well, Necron's like is it a Greek word? I remember someone telling me that Necron is a Greek word.
Like
Or-
necropolis.
Yeah, it's like descended from, so they're basically like space robotic zombies, pretty much. We're really not doing this
They're like
justice.
skeleton warriors, aren't they?
We have Tyranids, which are basically like the bugs from Starship Troopers.
That's exactly what they are. Sorry, that's exactly what they're based on.
Exactly. I feel like Warhammer 40,000 is a big melting pot of a lot of ideas of science fiction and fantasy.
But cranked up to like 300 out of scale of 10.
Yeah, in terms of like violence and bloodlust and just darkness.
Yeah.
But I mean, even the good guys. So we said there's no good guys. Closest thing are the Tau, which are the mecha space communists, and their idea is for the greater good. That's what they're building.
Yeah.
But everything they do is they look to bring in other species into the Tau. Okay.
Yes.
Now you think, okay, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Compared to the Imperium, which are the theocratic fascists and the
traitors,
the Tyranids that just want to consume everything. You think, do you know what? I could live with this.
Yeah, everyone should be communist. Communism is so good. We should spread it to everybody and incorporate everyone.
But then they've got like specific race castes.
Okay.
They sterilize all the other species. They
including human beings in some cases.
They can consume their planet. So.
But then on a scale of bad guys to good guys, everyone's towards the bad guys extent. Some are further than others, and there's no others that are further than the bad guy spectrum than Chaos and the Dark Gods. Now, me and Josh number 2 already know a lot about this, but because you've played Total War and the fantasy games, I'm going to quiz you. What are the names of the Dark Gods, and what are their brands, shall we say? Brands a bit corporate.
My days. So you've got Khorne, if I'm saying that correctly, and that is
well done.
War.
Yep, you could say that.
And also murder as well. You have Cinch, which is time. I think Cinch is over time and manipulates time.
And knowledge. Yeah, the god of change. Yeah.
Then you also have the one you mentioned, Slanesh, which is seduction.
They're not safe for the family. This is the part about the Warhammer
No fading
world.
to black in these scenes.
yeah, exactly.
And then Nurgle is the last one. The one of like disease and pestilence. Yeah.
God of Decay.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's definitely the grossest. Like, even looking at the animations online and the tabletop miniatures, I find it so gross and difficult to look at. I've got this phobia. I can't remember what it's called, but it's where you look at, say if you see a toad, they're toads that give off venom from their back. There's little holes in their back that comes out on strawberries. Sometimes the little holes. I really struggle looking at. And if you're familiar with 40K or fantasy, look at the Nurgle miniatures. Oh, they're so filthy and gross. They're covered in disease. There's flies coming out of their bodies. There's tongues coming out of their. Point is, Chaos is nasty. Like, it looks nasty, and Chaos is the manifestation of mankind and the Eldar's fears, emotions, deepest desires.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, right, I'll keep it.
No, you go on.
This is the problem. So, right, just like Dune, It's all premises around faster than light travel and how do they achieve it, and that's where the spice comes in. In Warhammer, to achieve faster than light travel, you literally travel through hell.
Yeah, that's the coolest bit.
Literally travel through hell. Okay?
I know. If I could just jump in, I saw a meme that's like, in Star Wars, they talk about how they travel through the speed of light, blah blah, all this made up stuff. Star Trek, they talk about how they bend wormholes, they go through one. In Warhammer, it's just we travel through hell. Like, it's that kind of grimdark.
Have you ever seen Event Horizon?
Yeah.
That's commonly seen as a prequel to Warhammer.
No, it's such a fan theory, though. But yeah, I've seen that.
Because the ship literally travels through hell and it brings hell back with it. So the ships travel through hell. Mm-hmm. Only the Eldar have found a way to do this without using the webways. And the Emperor's grand plan was to basically hijack the Eldar webways so that humanity wouldn't have to go through hell. Because when you do it, there's a risk that you come out completely changed or possessed by demons or 7 arseholes or something like that.
Thank you.
But within hell, so it's an immaterial, it's like a mirror world of what happens in the real universe, in the material universe. And emotion coalesces into the gods. So rage and anger is Khorne. Sneakiness, deception, change is Zench. Is Slanesh.
Yeah. We're a family-friendly show, okay? No, we're not.
Nurgle is about decay, sloth, laziness, but his gifts are you will be disgusting.
But you'll be immortal, you'll never die, nothing can kill you.
But the Emperor realizes this and realizes all he's doing is feeding. Humanity are feeding these beings. The Eldar did it. They brought Slanesh in. So his grand game is to unite humanity and then to tear it away from chaos. So to basically stop the need for going through the warp and then to close off chaos completely. It just goes horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah. Exactly. It does go horribly wrong. And there's even theory, we're talking about chaos gods, there's fan theories that even the Emperor himself is a chaos god and that he's the god of order. Because you've got Khorne, the god of war and bloodlust, Nurgle, the god of pestilence, Zench, knowledge, Slanesh, pleasure. Well, what does humanity also crave in their emotions as well? Order. And to an extent, the Emperor kind of has that. And this is where psychic powers are a big thing in the Warhammer 40,000, also obviously fantasy universe, in that basically certain people are born with special gifts that draws power from the warp in order to enact them. So every time someone uses a psychic powerness, there's a risk that they'll open up a big seething hole in warp and all these horrible demons will come out and kill everyone. It's pretty damn cool. And they're called psychers in this, but the way this is themed on like medieval history this is where it comes in, because they call psychers witches in this, and that so even men are called witches. It's like a universal term, and there's people that hunt them down before the era of the Emperor, and then in the 41st millennium, in the era of the Emperor, there's an inquisition that exists to basically hunt down these witches. It's very much obviously based off of the Spanish Inquisition in real life, so you can see a lot of links there.
But the Imperium is so huge that you've got the Inquisition, the witch hunters, but then you've also got the Psyker Corps, which are there to encourage psychic activity and develop them. And you've got this massive infighting, even among the Inquisition. So the Inquisition itself is its own huge faction with a huge amount of laws. So you've got the witch hunters, the demon hunters, which specialize in fighting chaos with their own order,
Order Militant, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. You've got the Order Xenos, which are there for specializing in fighting the threat from the alien. And then what's the last one?
The one that specializes with like literally fighting demons. Like there's Order Malleus, there's Order Hereticus, and then there's Order Xenos. So I think Hereticus is just fighting traitors that aren't necessary. People who are human beings that don't want to be part of the Imperium of Man. They're called heretics in this, and traitors. And then you've actually got the people who are the followers of chaos. So you don't have to.
Yeah. Like kind of like in the fantasy world where you've got like chaos princes. Some of them are like completely gnarled and messed up and look like demons, while
Yeah.
others just look like normal human beings.
Yeah.
But then still just follow chaos. And like even like some of the, I think the Norse clans as well, they also worship the chaos gods. So like in the game, the third game, like you can actually recruit them onto your side. They ally with you as well, and can also be like a secondary nation under you that you can then basically deal with because they worship chaos.
Yeah, you do see that, and I found that interesting because can you just be a Norse clan without being chaos? And I know you've got who are the people that are the ice courts?
Yes, Kislev. You have to
Kislev, who are like Northerners, just like the Norse clans, but they don't have the
Northerners.
Yeah, but not all the
a bunch of Geordies.
Oh, I'm in trouble now. Oh, my mate's gonna take the crap out of me. But yeah, you do see that you don't necessarily have. You can disobey the emperor and the imperium and the imperial court in the Warhammer fantasy world, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're a chaos follower. So you can just be a heretic.
Okay.
Although heretic, I think, might mean you also follow chaos. Maybe you're just.
Well, yeah. I mean, so in 40K, if you say that you don't follow chaos, but then you decide that the Imperium is just broken, as it does happen, you do get you get Space Marine chapters that go renegade, but there isn't many places to go. So you get declared a heretic straight away and hunted down, treated the same. But you need to resupply and stuff. So inevitably you end up fighting for chaos anyway.
Is Sigmar anywhere in 40K at all?
It's debatable because
officially no.
Yeah,
but there is a theory that he's one of the lost Primarchs. So remember I was talking about these generals that the Emperor created, his sons, who the Emperor very callously says, "Sorry, who are you? You're just some tools." 2 of them went missing.
Deleted from Imperial records.
Yes, and one of the theories is Sigmar is one of them.
Oh, okay.
And the Warhammer fantasy world exists within the Warhammer 40K world. It's just untouched by the outer, should we say, the other races. But chaos still has an influence on it.
It's complete conjecture. I mean, because the joke is that the what are they called? Who are the Golden Warriors in
the Custodes, the Adeptus?
No, not in the Age of Sigmar. What are they called? The
Storm Eternals.
Yes, Stormcast Eternals.
That's it.
So they're referred to as Sigmarines. Sigmar Marines, ground Marines, right? So you've got the Space Marine. Oh, we haven't talked about the Space Marines. How long were we talking about this? We've got to talk about Space Marines.
We've only done 32 minutes. I'm surprised we've got that much out in 32 minutes.
Well, they're referred to as ground Marines as a joke. So there's a little bit of thing, but officially, no. They're 2 completely separate franchises with some shared themes, and the Chaos Knights I think are the only things that really link it together.
Yeah, but this important thing, I guess we should give a bit more about fantasy. So there was Warhammer Fantasy, and then I didn't read into the lore too much about this, but essentially the end times occurred in the Warhammer Fantasy world. I think sometime, was it 2016, 2017, 2018 maybe? Someone correct us, because I don't know anything about fantasy apart from what I've heard. And then the Age of Sigmar came out, which is entirely new rules. The models had different bases. And then the Stormcast Eternals appear, and some of the factions take more of a side seat. So like the Empire, which you see in the Total War series, they instead their name in the Age of Sigmar board game that you play in real life is the Free Cities or something. So they're no longer quite the empire that you see in the game. I think the Total War series game is actually based off Warhammer Fantasy, the OG stuff before the end times came, because you haven't seen any Stormcast Eternals. But I guarantee you, when Warhammer 4 Total War comes out, they'll probably bring them out. Just
because even like the third game, the whole premise is like the end times and chaos is coming. And that's like the whole premise of the third game, that like whatever faction you pick, it's like chaos is coming and that you have to literally withstand. And I think one of the things I really did love about when they allowed all of the different factions from all the other games to play, they had this trailer, which was, I wish they did more with it. It was like a trailer, so you had like the wood elves, you had like the high elves, you had all the different men, you had the dwarfs, and you also had other races as well coming
Lizard
together
men,
as a council to say like we have to deal. And I think the lizard men were with them as well.
Yeah.
Like we have to deal with undead. We have to deal with vampires. We have to deal with orcs and goblins. And now we've got trolls and we've got ogres and now we've got like chaos coming. We now must unify and work together to prevent us from like basically being annihilated. But maybe it's something they will implement in the game. But that was like the big trailer. And I'm hoping that they do implement it in a game where you can actually have some form of like alliance between the living against chaos and the dead.
Yeah, so
Makes sense.
I know in the tabletop version of Age of Sigmar, they referred to the forces of order and the forces of chaos, I think.
Slaves of Darkness?
Slaves of Darkness.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I'm not
Slaves of
sure.
Darkness.
Then there's also
So-
other ones as well, like orcs, and orcs come under something else.
I think
as
they
well.
I
Or
think they
slaves
come
of-
under that ground because they split it
right.
into two books, and the whole thing was that essentially Sigmar ascended and he disappeared, and Archaon, who's the big chaos baddie, and his model is freaking awesome.
Yeah, the Lord of the End Times, very cool model.
Age
Yeah,
of Sigmar, and Sigmar disappears, then he comes back with his Stormcast Eternal. He goes off and he finds this magic forge. And he creates the Stormcast Eternals, and these are basically pure heroes from humanity that he's like elevated, torn them apart, reforged them, and then they can like go off and fight, and they get killed, but they get reforged again, but they lose a little bit more of their memory each time. So there's all sorts of stuff going on there, but I'm not. I don't like. The only reason I know anything about Age of Sigmar is because I've been watching the Black Talon series on Warhammer Plus.
Black Talon series. What is that?
It's an animated
fantasy
series
one?
about
Okay.
Stormcast Eternals.
Oh, right.
And I
Okay.
sort of thought, oh, maybe it's about time to find out, because I have been pure 40k, because it's just so massive and I love it.
I
Just
know.
hearing from both of you, I can see how large.
I know
how
we're
large it is.
Such mega nerds about it, but I think it is more popular than Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40,000. It's
easy.
definitely their trademark thing, and Warhammer is getting more and more mainstream, especially the 40k one. Like I was literally watching TV. This was a year ago. I haven't been watching mainstream TV. I just stream everything now. But watching TV at my parents, I was seeing like Games Workshop adverts on TV. That is a big sign that they've made it. And Star Wars have this whole expanded universe. They have their own tabletop game called Star Wars Legion. Dune. They made it on the big screen. There's some board games about that. Lord of the Rings, big board game scene.
And I think you had you had Lord of the Rings, you had like Chronicles of Narnia, you had then Star Wars came in as well, and Star Trek, which was kind of like, not to say like vanilla, but was like easy to. Well, Lord of the Rings is hard to understand, especially if you go into like the other books that he's written. But
The
like,
Silmarillion,
especially if you just focus on like Lord of the Rings, it's easy to understand. But it feels like, to your point, like hardcore nerdiness is actually now coming to the forefront. Like, how many people during lockdown had games of like Dungeons of Dragons with their housemates?
Yeah, online, virtually, you can easily do it.
And like they've now done a film as well. They're thinking of doing like a TV show. You've got like Baldur's Gate 3, which could be one of the biggest games that comes out this year. So I think, to your point, like real nerdiness is actually starting to come to the forefront, and I think people are tired of like things that just scrape the surface and want things that are more like in depth,
with lots of lore to read into. Like, and we've spoken about this on the show, that we think during lockdown, because there's nothing else people do, people kind of started to have a lot more respect and wanted to take in nerdy stuff more, as you said, like Dungeons and Dragons. And you had a lot of friends who took up playing Warhammer and painting hell. You even sent me a photo of your wife making some Warhammer models, and I was like, I'd never thought I'd see this day.
I didn't as well. You have no idea what that cost me.
What did it cost? Everything. Oh, Thanos. You do remind me of Thanos these days, Josh, actually, not gonna lie. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. But yeah, I think it is about to become mainstream. We mentioned this briefly earlier, that Henry Cavill is signed up to do a TV show with Amazon Prime.
Well, talking of fan theories, there
God.
is some suggestion that Henry Cavill may well be the Emperor of Mankind.
What, in the show?
No, I mean
Real life
of Magdeburg.
Oh, right, okay.
Because we were talking about the fact that he's existed throughout history and he's just sat in the background. Now, in our hour of need, Henry Cavill has come forward.
Yeah, he has.
To bring about Warhammer 40,000.
Yes.
For the Emperor!
Yes.
The golden one.
Yeah, when he did that post, I mean, after he left, it was a pretty. I wish it was on better terms. They announced he was going to do a Warhammer show, but he left The Witcher and then immediately put a post online saying, in talks with Amazon, we're finally going to give this unit this rich universe something we can do. And he just says at the end,
For the Emperor!
and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it's going to go mainstream. And even during lockdown, I was following his posts. Like, you could see him painting Warhammer models, playing Fallout 4 and stuff. That's not Warhammer related, but just seeing him do that, I'm like, it's so cool to see nerdiness in vogue like that.
And it's weird because like you've got now actors who are nerds. Like another one is like Chris Pratt is also a big nerd.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. And like I think the weird thing is like you've got like Henry Cavill who's like, I build PCs in my spare time. I love Warhammer. I love Mass Effect. I've loved The Witcher. I've read the books, played the games.
Doesn't like the TV series though, does he? Ooh.
But I think like the fact that you've got stars who are actually interested, I think that also helps as well. Like I remember when they first announced Henry Cavill, because people are clamoring for, the guy in Rogue One, the scientist who also was
Mads
in the
Mikkelsen.
Yes, they wanted him to play Geralt. So when
he would be a good choice.
So then when Henry Cavill was picked, people were like, how dare they pick Superman to play The Witcher? How is this going to turn out? This is going to be awful.
Yeah.
But the fact that he loved the books, loved the games, had read the books and played the games, he actually gave a form of realism to the character. And I think that's what kind of that got fans. And I think like now with, not to also to divulge, because this is an actual Warhammer episode, but the fact that now like Liam Hemsworth is going to be Witcher, it's kind of got me thinking like, what the hell are they doing? Like
what? Andre, I forget his surname, but
Andrei Sapkowski
has said he's lauded Henry Cavill and said he is the embodiment of The Witcher. And when I think
the Emperor of Mankind,
I think of Henry Cavill's Geralt, because he has got it spot on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's carried that show. He really has.
He has.
I know. Hopefully he will do well with this Amazon Prime TV show. Although I will say, what else has Amazon Prime done recently as a TV show that was an absolute flop? That's right. Rings of Power.
It wasn't that bad. I know where it went wrong. It wasn't that bad.
I mean, I thought I'd give it as we were talking about averages earlier, I'd give it a 6 out of 10.
No, do you know what their problem, very briefly, is that they were given such a small amount of material that they've had to create a lot from. And Amazon's gone, we've paid a shit ton of money for this. And it is huge.
Yeah.
They've gone, right, we want 7 seasons out of this, or whatever it is. So the first season, actually, you cut out all the crap in between, like, episode 2 and the last episode. But actually, when Sauron reveals himself and you get the creation of Mount Doom, that's actually a pretty good episode.
Yeah, that was a great episode, episode 7. That was a fantastic episode.
The build-up in the middle bit was just a bit meh, just a bit dull, because they're trying to stretch this thing out.
Well, and they've got to introduce a fantasy world. It's quite slow to do that. Some episodes of the first season of Game of Thrones were a bit slow, but you've just got to get into it. And if you haven't read the books, you're like, boring. But, you get slowly drawn into it. And then I think with season 2, do have the world ready. So, I'd be keen to see, this is going to be a TV series with Henry Cavill, the Warhammer one. Yeah, so I'm quite glad because you can flesh it out a lot more. Whilst there is a movie, I don't know, that might be a hard sell. We'll see. So, bringing it back, because we always love going off on tangents on the show. It's just too hard not to. So, Grimdark is very much what is the trademark, I wouldn't say the trademark thing, but the defining thing of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and to some extent the fantasy universe. What would you guys describe Grimdark as? Maybe starting with you, Josh, number 1.
I would say possibly like a world where everything is just shades of grey, which continually just get darker and darker. And that when you look at the different factions, different characters, different individuals, different actions, it's like, what is the actual difference? Like, okay,
they're all the same. They're all evil.
This guy, for example, if let's say the Emperor, and you said some of the deeds that he's done, and what the Imperium has done in his name, And then you start asking yourself the question that if they were orcs, would and they did exactly this, or if it was like an alien species, or if it was another faction that did this, would I be okay with this? Technically, no. But is it because they're human and I'm human and I kind of recognize with them that, that these are the people that we're following in the story, that I then think like they're kind of good, but when you actually look at their actions and take them away from their actions, you see that actually, no, they're just as bad as the orcs or other factions within the universe.
Yeah, the orcs have like a simplicity to them, like
space mushrooms.
Yeah, they are space mushrooms, and they're actually the most psychic race. Unknowingly, they don't even know it. They're the most psychic race in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Like literally, they paint cars red in it, and they believe red makes things go faster. And because they're unknowingly the most psychic, it generally, all their vehicles that they paint red do go faster. It's ridiculous. And their spaceships are just literally piles of junk, just like glued together with like duct tape. But because they believe it works, it works.
So one of the theories, another fan theory, is that the Emperor is still alive, even though he's a rotting corpse. He's still alive because the orcs believe he's still alive.
Oh, yeah, you could say that, actually. That's something, yeah, that so maybe they could be helping.
Energy, but...
What would you say is Grimdark, Josh? Number 2.
So the Grimdark is basically that nothing is going to get better. Shades of grey, everything is awful. I mean, I think one of the most Grimdark things I've heard in 40K is that there was a group of humans that were fighting off the orcs, and they called for help. And the Adeptus Mechanicus of Mars is another faction of the Imperium that they worship the Emperor as the machine god. The Emperor played a little bit of a, of course I am.
Yeah.
Just build my shit for
Convenient,
me.
yeah.
But they, I mean, so they're meant to be the tech priests. They're like the machine sorcerers, if you like. But they don't know how they sort of know how things work, but everything they do is by, like they entreat the machine spirit in everything, and they have prayers and sacred oils for waking things up. But everything is learned by rote. They don't really. Sometimes they create things, sometimes they don't, and there's a huge amount of lore there. But anyway, so these guys, and their tagline is "Flesh is weak," and they're constantly looking to replace parts of themselves with metal. Anyway, they respond to this distress signal for these thousands of humans that are escaping. I think it's the orcs. It doesn't matter who they are, but they're on their own, and these guys are on their last legs, thinking they're about to be murdered brutally by another alien species. The Adeptus Mechanicus turns up and says, thank the Emperor, you've answered our praises. Adeptus Mechanicus says, you've been saved, and turned them all into servitors. And servitors are humans that have been lobotomized and turned into like robots, flesh robots. And the Mechanicus is like, we've saved you. Like, non-ironically, we've saved you by turning you all into lobotomized robots for us to use.
Yeah, essentially to become like techno servants, pretty much. Like they've got no brain, they just wander around like aimlessly, but they're just there for people's commands to be followed.
Mental health is really important to us at Pick Up the Mic, and we love to share resources that can support your mental health. And that's why we are so glad to have today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get you started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live appointments when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't right for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at an affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/pickupthemic. I've also linked them down below in the description. So again, that's betterhelp.com/pickupthemic, MIC, and start your journey today.
So that brings us to
Just sorting my life out.
Thank you for sorting your life out. So that brings us to one thing we haven't spoken about yet is what is the role of artificial intelligence in the Warhammer 40,000 universe? Because we've carefully sort of skirted around that. What do you think, Josh? Do you think AI is allowed?
I would say no, just based on like the amount of times that humans and AI just don't mix. Like you can look at Mass Effect, Terminator, Matrix, many sci-fi that humans and AI never seem to mix, and then it gets to a point the AI says, well, we think we can do a better job than you can, and then take over. So I'd say potentially no.
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay.
AI does exist in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, but the Imperium of Man hates AI. Like, what do they call it?
Abominable intelligence.
Yeah, clever, very clever. Because before the rise of the Emperor, mankind at some point, but it's a lot of the cool stuff about Warhammer history is they deliberately blur it out. So there's 2 Space Marine legions you just don't hear about. You don't know what happened to them.
The missing Primarchs.
There's at some point in like the long history between our time and the Emperor's time, somewhere in between there when man is going in space, there's some war with AI. What do they call them? Men of Iron?
Men of Iron, that's it.
Yeah, there's like a big rebellion. And we see that theme in a lot of like the genre talk. Mass Effect, the whole reason for the Reapers is because of the eventuality of synthetic life and organic life fighting against each other.
Yeah.
Star Trek, it happens, and Picard to an extent, although I think that's because of the Romulans. Yeah, and then Dune, especially Dune, you know, the way they talk about the Butlerian Jihad, how basically there's a fear of AI and technology that mankind has moved away from that towards developing other ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. So AI has that sort of...
And that's where the concept of this machine spirit comes in. So the Mechanicus believe... And this is the thing about Warhammer. It is just a universe of contradictions.
Okay.
So there's no... You know, the Emperor was trying to get rid of religion. He hated the idea that he was referred to as a god. He tried to get rid of that. But then there are acts of faith that cause miracles as well. And with the machines, so the Mechanicus... They don't really create anything. They learn by rote, and they believe that you entreat the machine spirit in weapons, like inanimate objects.
They literally pray to them, yeah.
They pray to them, but then there is this concept of the machine spirit that wakes up and makes like their battle titans with these huge, like building-sized battle walkers, makes them work, and they do use like little bits of brain to like coalesce the machine spirit. So there is like a concept of a machine life, but then at the same time it sounds like complete nonsense. What's the word? Superstitious nonsense as well. So it's a
that's got a big part in it, you know.
And this is the thing Morgan was saying. The universe is so big that actually, if they decide to retcon a piece of the lore, they can just say, well, because of time dilation and stuff, this is a historian's perspective. You know, like history is written by the victors.
Yeah.
This was one particular historian's perspective, and they got all excited and over-exaggerated and said it was a miracle, but actually it wasn't, or was it? It's so big that they can maneuver the law to suit their purposes. You have no idea. Whether it's true, it's not, whether it fits, or whether it'll come back again. But it's it's quite interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot we can build on there, you know, and technology and flesh is fused together. Like a lot of people have like bionic implants, kind of like the Borg. Like you could say servitors are kind of like the Borg to an extent, without all the Borg ideology. There's a lot of grim darkness to the Borg you could see in Star Trek, and you can see that in Warhammer 40,000. And a lot of these fantasy and science fiction genres all kind of take inspiration from each other. Now, I know we've touched on some already, but what would you say are some of the inspirations behind the Warhammer 40,000 universe?
It's not StarCraft, that's for certain.
Well, actually, Leagues of Votan, that new race that they've brought out, looks very much like they're inspired off the Terran Marines from StarCraft.
Yeah, but that's only because StarCraft stole it from.
Oh yeah.
No, they
whatever
did.
it was.
So there was Games Workshop and who produces it? Epic? No, not Epic. Who's it that produces?
StarCraft, Activision, I think.
Blizzard.
Blizzard,
Yeah.
Blizzard, yes.
They were meant to be working together to produce a game, and it didn't
Yeah.
work out. And Blizzard went off and created
StarCraft.
StarCraft and Warcraft. So actually, they completely lifted a whole load of Game Workshop's IP, and I think it was before it was effectively trademarked. So
Oh no.
Awkward.
Yeah. And now Blizzard, I think, apart from like, the big companies like Sony and Microsoft who have like PlayStation and Xbox, Activision Blizzard is next the biggest gaming company, and how much money Blizzard is making from like that made from those two IPs is like, and even like Diablo 4 that just came out, they said it's the fastest selling game in history for the first week. It's the fastest selling game in history.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, wow, like even above like GTA, even above Call of Duty. And I was like, were people starving for a really good Diablo game? And I was like, the fact that I think they put it on console as well actually helped with the sales as well.
Yeah, you've got to appeal to like all those platforms these days.
I mean, their marketing has been huge.
Yeah.
Like, they've been everywhere.
They had a
Like
special
Rochester.
day in London on the weekend. You could go to like a pop-up where they sell this Diablo merchandise and play some games and stuff.
And funny enough, if the Activision Blizzard sale goes through, then literally Microsoft would own the IP of like StarCraft, World of Warcraft, Diablo, Call of Duty, and all that other stuff. And it's just ridiculous. Because also they've also worked, Xbox have worked with like Games Workshop to do like, the Vermintide games.
Yeah, that's a good
and
one.
like those have been on like Game Pass, and I've really enjoyed playing those ones. So potentially you could actually, hopefully everything comes full circle and you get a 40K game made by Microsoft under Blizzard using StarCraft technology.
No. not after how they destroyed Halo. No.
Wow.
And to be fair, Games Workshop are, although they produced a lot of crappy games, sorry GW, they're actually very protective of their IP.
That's one thing that Morgan told me, that's one of the fears that he has concerning like the TV show, is that they could just be like, no, Amazon, you must do this, this, and this. Even though you might give us 600 million to do this show, you must do it this way and it must look exactly like this. And I think the major contention could be is like, they're like, no, we need more Slanesh and we need more in this scene. And Amazon are like, I think that's a bit too far.
Well, yeah, but
No, I don't think they will, because there's always been this tension about, do they get rid of Slanesh? Do they get rid of the
it's
nipples,
the least
the
like
nipples and the breasts
family-friendly
of the
stuff.
demonettes? Well, I mean, it's literally the god of
Pleasure,
rape and discrepancy, pleasure, but pleasure in taken to the extreme. That's what the Chaos Gods are, extremes of these emotions. And there's always been this, well, is Games Workshop a game for kids? Do you take it out? Do you take it out
It's
of the
not a game
storyline?
for kids, no.
because it's so dark. But then you do get like there's a big book scene of it, the Black Library, which is like another. What did I say? Citadel was another subsidiary of Games Workshop that handles like a lot of their books and lore, and they do release a range for kids. And I've seen the covers of a cartoon, but I'm like, but literally like. They showed us Space Marines as these cool cartoon blue characters, and like they're like superhuman children that have been indoctrinated into a fascist state that will execute and burn people and call them witches. But
It's like
this is why it's
a
difficult.
Witcher book for children.
Yeah,
For every
exactly,
Space
imagine.
Marine in existence, 1,000 aspirants, as they call them, have died. So it takes 1,000 people before they find the one person that can then potentially survive the training and the surgery. So a lot of them die through that as well. So everything is like I said, everything's turned up to like 300, right?
Yeah.
So, if you try and think of the maths it takes to create a chapter of 1,000 Marines, the number of people that have died just to get to that point, it just doesn't make sense. You're better off having las guns and sending in the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, but then you've got factions within the Imperium. You've got the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, the superhumans that are crafted using like special genetic modifications, and they're given super armor. Super cool. They're the poster children you'd see everywhere for like Games Workshop. Then you've got the Astra Militarum, which are just the grunts, like the human beings, just in weak body armor, some standard issue weapons, who just die in their millions, like sent to the slaughter. They're the meat grinder that would win battles through attrition. Then you've got like elements of the Inquisitions, like the Sisters of Battle, who are basically like you could say that they're the very obvious reference to the witch hunters of like the medieval era, like an all-female super army.
Nuns with guns.
Yeah, nuns with guns, pretty much. They're very cool. And that's just the
just quickly. I'm just thinking of like a B budget comedy movie, just nuns with guns, featuring coming to a cinema near you, nuns with guns,
featuring Henry Cavill. Yeah, I'd watch that.
Don't give Amazon any ideas.
I'd watch it. So we were talking about games, and there's been quite a few adaptations of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So there's Fire Warrior in 2003, which was like a first-person shooter, which is very much of its time. It was good then, but I don't know if it is aged well now.
Yeah, but it was solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
The most solid of all, though, I think, which we're all familiar with, is the Dawn of War series, which began in 2004. It's like a strategy game, kind of similar to Total War, but more real-time and less about the big map and campaign map.
It was Command and Conquer in Warhammer, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. But it was amazing. Yeah, it was so good, so addictive. So addictive that they brought out... Well, they brought out various like expansion packs and stuff, but Dawn of War 3, the most recent addition to the universe, was released in 2017, so not long ago. And I have a feeling there's probably room for expansion, especially if Warhammer's going to
killed the franchise.
Oh,
Dawn
really?
of War 3 was a complete flop.
Oh, no.
Wah, wah, wah.
I can't remember which one that is.
Traitors.
Well, that still works.
One job.
You failed the God Emperor by ruining the game.
And how have you not mentioned Space Marine?
Yeah, but this is it. I'm coming to it. I didn't list it on here. But Space Marine, that is a classic. I can't remember when the first one came out, but the second one is coming out imminently. Have you seen the trailer? I think you sent me a trailer for it.
Yeah, they were doing like, the video game awards, and I was just like looking at it. I was like, oh my days, this actually looks really good. And the person who's voicing the Space Marine in the trailer is the actor who plays, was Rolo in Vikings. He voices the Space Marine.
Nice.
And like they brought him, like they had this all like behind the scenes, and he was just talking about like how much he loved like the whole universe growing up, and how he used to buy the figurines. So potentially, if they could incorporate him and Henry Cavill in the TV show, that'd be amazing.
Would you?
That'd
just
be
while we're on
badass.
that point, do you know who else was a really well-known Warhammer player?
No, who?
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Really? What, Robin
Wow.
Williams?
Wow,
No way,
Huge.
really?
Wow.
Huge.
Did not know that. I know a
At
couple.
all? No, I didn't know that either.
Who else? Andy Serkis, who does Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I've seen a video of him just going to the Warhammer studio and talking to some of the people and having an interview. Mark Strong as well. He did the original voice of the Space Marine character in the first game.
John Hurt.
Yeah. You know what? You scratch beneath the surface, you will find a lot of people who actually love Warhammer, and some of them secretly. Like, I've only really come out about it recently just because I was ashamed, but I love it too much. And there are some things that are challenges in the Warhammer universe. Like, it is quite a male-dominated fan base with the tabletop scene, but it is getting better and better. Like, there's Instagram pages that I follow that have female players playing Warhammer, like Girlhammer. Katie plays 40K, and then her girlfriend, who's, I can't remember her name, is literally her title is like also plays 40K. Great play of it. Good way to get some more followers, and I hope that's improving. It's a good sign of things to come, especially with it going mainstream soon as well. I'm very keen to see more of that. Now, let's talk about some of the TV and film adaptations. Some of these are more known than others. Some of them are fan-based shows. Some of them were fan-based shows that were so damn good that the studio of Games Workshop actually just took them on board and made them members of staff. So in 2010, there was a film called Ultramarines, which was okay. It was okay. Considering there wasn't much else out there at the time, it was reasonable. It was a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10.
That's being generous.
Now, this is a good one. hell, I need to send you these, Josh. You need to watch them after. I was going to say after work, the same work. Hell's Reach in 2021. That is a really good story about a fight between the Imperium and the Orcs. Very grim dark, very cool, and the animation style is very, very unusual.
So it was book by Dan Abnett. So Dan Abnett is I think one of their two, and sorry for all the other Games Workshop authors out there, one of their two star authors. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book called Hell's Reach. Is it Dan Abnett or is it ADB that wrote it? I think it's Dan Abnett. Anyway, it's a book.
One of those two. They take in turns. Yeah.
And it's about the Orc invasion of Armageddon.
A world called Armageddon.
And it's
great
based,
name.
It's based around as a Space Marine Black Templar champion, a champion chaplain who's sort of narrating and voicing over his experience of trying to survive there. But so I can't remember the name of the creator, but he's basically taking excerpts from the audiobook, which is beautifully narrated, and he's created his own over a couple of years, improving animation. He created animation for it.
But it's literally literally drawn stop motion stuff, like literally just getting a pencil, charcoal, and then rubbing out and then drawing the next bit. Like I don't know if
it progresses like full color animation.
Yeah, because I know there was like a fan-made X-Men like comic book where they basically had, the comic book style, like moving from one page to the other,
the
talking,
the flick animation,
and like later on it was like picture frame by frame, like and it was really cool, especially if that it was fan-made.
But it's probably because he started off with like limited funds, and then as more and more people got more followers, it probably got more funds to actually start animating it and improving it. Kind of what happened with Hell's Reach.
But it's a 100% watch.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's about 2 hours. It's like literally movie. It started off as episodes, but it's like literally movie length when you put them all together. But it's damn good.
And the fact that this is one guy's love child is just breathtaking. It's amazing. It's like 2 hours long, all of it.
Yeah, it's really good. I was showing a friend a couple of weeks ago. There's also Death of Hope as well. That's really good. It's not as long. It was only about like 10, 15 minutes, but very cool, very grim dark. Very, very grim dark.
That was set during the Horus Heresy, so Warhammer 30,000.
Yeah, you're going to find a lore, and that's so confusing.
I don't like. Right, I know I got carried away at the start of this show, so I apologise.
Oh no, that's fine. Someone had to do it.
But just to paint it into perspective, the Horus Heresy was fleshed out in the Horus Heresy books. That started 15 years ago?
Yeah, I remember I was reading that when I was like
still
13.
not finished it. It's still not reached the crescendo of it, and it's over 100 books long.
Yeah, it's so long.
Wow.
We're not talking comics, books, novels, like 400 pages each. Most of them are third grade.
Yeah, some of them are better than others.
You can plot through, but some of them are like amazing, really good. I've not finished them all yet. I've not even got to the Siege of the Imperial Palace. But just to explain why it took so long to frame 40K is because it's fucking huge.
Yeah, there's so much in it. It's pretty crazy. And, we need to also talk about the stuff that goes on Warhammer Plus as well. So this is how, like, modern Games Workshop have taken things that, just like Apple, just like Disney, they have their own streaming service as well called Warhammer Plus, where they use it to release their own TV shows. Sometimes it's animation, sometimes it's, well, I wouldn't say that.
Battle reports.
Yeah, battle reports. Sometimes just painting guides and stuff. It's quite cool.
Lore discussions as well.
Yeah, lore discussions.
That's very clever. Yeah, because just thinking, like, I've started to get into Dungeons and Dragons because like Baldur's Gate 3, and like they have discussions, but it's all like on like a YouTube setting or someone being on like Twitch to talk about it. But the fact they were ahead of the curve and be like, you know what, let's have it on our own platform, so everyone then comes to our platform to watch our content, kind of thing.
Yeah, they screwed it up a bit, but
okay.
But yeah, it's a good way to basically generate income and like build a solid fan base.
They've generated income. It's just they've not generated the content. Is the problem?
That's what it's all about, money. So on Warhammer Plus, you had Angels of Death, which is pretty good. But if you're trying to look up Angels of Death online, there's an anime out there just also called Angels of Death. It's so hard to bloody find this Warhammer one. Even typing in Warhammer 40,000 Angels of Death, I still struggled to find that one because there's some anime that's quite famous called Angels of Death that's totally unrelated to the Warhammer universe.
And one of the interesting things about Angels of Death is it was the officially sponsored and paid employment creation of the guy that created the Hell's Reach animation. So the one we were talking about, but was his love child. They hired him instantly for Warhammer Plus, and he created their first release.
That's pretty cool. I like the animation because it's mostly black and white, but certain colors shine through, like red.
Yeah, I think there's a type of like filming style. Like you kind of see it with like I think is it Sin City?
Yeah, Sin City.
Literally, it's like it's black and white,
sort of stylized.
Yeah. No, there's a famous scene in Schindler's List that does that as well. It's the whole movie.
Yeah,
in
the
black
girl
and
with
white.
the red scarf. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite an emotionally touching moment. That it's really powerful to do an entirely black and white show, but then have little bits of color for significance. I quite like it. But yeah, really cool. Definitely worth a watch. Angels of Death. And then, how could we not talk about this? Actually, isn't on Warhammer Plus, but the guy who made it
on Warhammer Plus.
Is on Warhammer Plus.
Yeah, they lifted and shifted it onto Warhammer Plus.
Oh, fair. Astarte. Have you seen Astartes?
No.
Oh, I should have sent that to you before.
Stop the show now.
Yeah, we're taking a break, folks.
I'm not resuming until you watch it.
It's so good because this will show you like what Space Marines are to normal humans. Like, there's something called. Was it Astartes Fear? Astartes Dread. Basically, that human beings, even though the Space Marines could be on their side, they're just so big and bulky, like super muscly.
Transhuman dread.
That's it. Yes, transhuman dread. They're so big and bulky that normal humans are just like taken in awe at their size, their power.
They're, 7 feet tall. They've got a fused rib cage. They've got 2 hearts, 3 lungs.
Technically, they can spit acid as well, but I think that's just a little too silly. In the lore.
I mean, this whole thing that they can consume the brain matter of their enemies and learn like
find out memories. Yeah,
but it comes back to what I was saying: is that there's so much mythology. It could be true. It could not be true.
And some of it's sort of faded out more than others. Like that, I think that spitting acid thing's a little bit silly.
Is it kind of like Star Wars? Like I was reading up on some lore that. Because the Jedi were so powerful, like the people, like they love them, but then there was also this gap of like they're freaks, but because they're freaks for us, we will like abide by it. But then when like Palpatine says that, oh, they tried to kill me, people are like, well, we didn't really like them in the first place. We now hate the Jedi. So is there that kind of gap between like the general populace and Space Marines that they see the necessity of them? But like, if they were given the opportunity, they would cast them out as freaks or abominations.
No, I don't think so because they are. Because don't forget that the Imperium and the Imperium is so big. It's what do they say? It's a billion worlds or a million worlds?
Yeah,
million planets. It's
trillions of human beings.
Like, the scale is enormous. I mean, the joke is that the most powerful faction in the Imperium is the faction that's in charge of keeping time because it's so big.
The bureaucracy, the bureaucracy.
But the Space Marines are the Angels of Death, the Emperor's Angels. They are seen as his
knights.
Yeah, but there are so many different chapters. You've got some that you think, how are you not chaos? You are basically chaos. Like they are like bloody bloodthirsters that will kill civilians on sight. They don't care as far as they're concerned. They're either sending them to the Emperor. You've got some that are mutants that are basically sharks, like they have shark DNA.
Some that have wolf DNA who can actually turn into it. They actually have like a curse.
The Space Wolves.
So basically these Astartes are crafted from genetic material, and the Emperor introduced other things in that genetic material to try and give like each legion as something they specialize in. Yeah. So the Space Wolves are like the Emperor's executioners, really good in like melee combat and just executing monsters and people. But they have a curse that basically they can turn into werewolves. Blood Angels, probably the most noble, most beautiful, and most like human friendly out of all the Space Marines. But their curse is that they turn into basically vampires sometimes.
I think the Salamanders will be saying, "Am I a joke to you?" at this point.
But they aren't cursed, though.
They're not cursed, but they are the most human-friendly faction.
Oh, they are the most human-friendly faction. Yeah, they are. They are, and that's it. Because whilst human beings look at the Space Marines, apart from the Chaos Space Marines, they look at the Loyalist Space Marines as angels, knight. They're basically like a knight knightly orders. They look up to them as like protectors, but they also fear them because they can, like, if you read the books of Warhammer, they can, and even in the rules to an extent, they just slaughter. Like, one Space Marine could easily best 30 human beings, like, so easily. That's why they're like, there's this Astartes dread. And bringing it back to the show Astartes, watch it, because that will show you just why people fear the Astartes, because 5 of them just take down a whole ship full of heretic human beings. But, like, boy, are they tough as nails. Like, they're big, beastly, with very loud, powerful weapons.
But they're like the embodiment of like the sort of special forces sort of style, like modern military. So they don't have the Black Templars are probably the most knightly order.
Yeah, literally using like swords and pistols, like getting up close and slicing people up, which is probably the most knightly form of it. But then this is still the 41st Men. There's still plenty of like super science fiction-y guns and stuff like that. But that's what I think is a cool defining thing about the 40K universe and the Grim Dark, because you've got all these knights and stuff getting up close with axes.
And that's one of the great things about Warhammer 40K is coming back again to this. It's so big, you can create your own lore, your own faction. You can paint them, you can model them any way you like, because actually it's plausible.
That they would exist, yeah.
So you've got, the Imperial Guard, you've got the Death Corps of Krieg, which are all like clones that are sent in waves, World War I style waves in their millions, to take over enemy bases, and they'll keep firing the artillery, and they're like, 80% casualties, no problem.
Yeah, they could live with it, yeah.
You've got the Steel Legion, which are meant to be like the Russians, aren't they?
Yeah, that's probably more someone else, the Valhallan Ice Warriors.
Oh, yeah,
But
okay.
they fight in like just like horribly blitzed out, destroyed cities full of radiation and stuff.
You've got the Catachans, which are basically the Arnie and his squad from
Yeah.
from
Get to the
Predator.
chopper.
So they've all got massive muscles, and they fight in jungle death worlds, fighting all these like big bugs and things. You've got the Mordian Guard, which are like your like 1800s English with the white custodian hats and stuff like that. So you can craft whatever you like and create a lore for them, because the Imperium is so big and the distance between the planets is so big that actually they've moved away, a bit like the Roman Empire, where you can do whatever you like as long as you believe in the emperor and you use his currency.
Yes, yeah.
It's the same sort of concept that they've created around that.
Okay, so as we're drawing towards the end of our fabulous show, because we
To
could
our
just
ramble.
I think we should look for a part 2 because this lore is like mind blowing. Like,
and we haven't even spoken much about 30K as well. Like,
I
we could go
tried, you
into
cut
it.
me off.
Yeah, I know. But
The man wanted it.
give the people
what they want, yeah.
So, quick fire game I came up with. It's called Are They the Good Guys? So, the Imperium in the Warhammer 40,000 world, what is the consensus? Are they the good guys?
No, based off what both of you have said
Yeah.
and all the different things that they've done, no.
We've been very explicit about that's not true. The Federation in Star Trek.
Federation, I would say yes.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because at least with them, part of it is like cooperation. And the way they always go in is like, oh, we come, we want to bring in and talk to you, and then the guns come out if violence then starts to spew. But at least they give them a chance.
The pen or the sword, what's more powerful? Yeah. Okay, Section 32 in the Star Trek universe. Good guys or not?
I don't know enough about them, but they're, you've always got to have your black ops, sneaky beaky,
Yeah,
special circumstances.
you've got to defend democracy by doing undemocratic things, right?
Yeah, but
Isn't that-
even in the culture books, you've got special circumstances. So
Really?
Have you guys read any of the culture stuff by Ian Banks?
No, but
Save
I've
that.
heard
That's
about-
another episode you want to do.
Yeah, that'll just be you rambling at me and Josh, just sitting by yourself, just talking. Let me finish.
And another thing.
Yeah, for a whole 2 hours. Okay. Yeah, a whole 2 hours. Okay, next one. The Galactic Empire in Star Wars.
That is debatable because like
The
reason why is that like if you're looking at like the expanded universe, so before Disney bought it, there was the beings called the Yuzhong Vong, and like Admiral Thrawn, who you then see in like the new series, he comes and tells Palpatine that there is the Yuzhong Vong. So Palpatine realizes with this massive enemies who are resistant to the Force and are in their droves, hundreds of millions are coming to attack the galaxy. They're coming from outside of the galaxy. That an empire is then needed. And then the issue is that after they defeat the empire, the resistance, and then become the new republic, they do what the republic does, which is always stupidity. Is like, let's demilitarize ourselves. So when the Yuzhong Vong attack, more people die when the Yuzhong Vong attack the galaxy than any point in time with the Galactic Empire or even the Clone Wars. Allegedly, more people died when the Yuzhong Vong invaded than the Clone Wars and the Empire combined. So then I'm just looking at it in that light.
It's all a question of scale.
Looking at in that light, like the reason the Galactic Empire is there is to prevent the Yuzhong Vong invading, and then, well, it's also there so therefore that Sidious can become immortal and rule forever. That's another part of the Galactic Empire. But the fact that they are also there as a buffer or as a system to then fight the Yuzhong Vong. And then if you look at like the classic, the expanded universe, what happens because there was no empire? Like how many people die? The fact
the
that
chaos, the anarchy.
They take over. They even get to Coruscant and then attack Coruscant. The amount of billions of beings to die in the Star Wars universe, planets destroyed because the empire isn't there. And it's kind of like when people say, like, was the Roman Empire the good guys? But then you ask yourself the question that
was anyone the good guys?
Like, if the empire wasn't there, what would have happened when the Huns actually came to Europe?
Someone else would have taken over. I feel, historically speaking, like every society had its good sides and its bad sides. But I will say the Romans did go around like literally burning civilizations to the ground and salting their earth so nothing could survive.
And going back to
back
to 40K and the Imperium saying, oh, they're the bad guys, and you know the prologue saying this is the most horrendous fascist regime ever seen. Literally, just praying to a chaos god can create a full-scale chaos invasion on the planet and unleash demons. Potentially. Not always, but it happens. You're beset on all sides by aliens that are looking to take over. You've got the Tyranids that are just mindless bugs that want to consume everything. You've got the fact that going through, to feed the Imperium, you've got to travel through hell, which can cause a demonic invasion as well. You've got the fact that the Emperor, they can't let the Emperor die because he's powering the Astronomicon, which is this beacon in the warp that allows you, when you're traveling through hell, you can say, it's like the lighthouse.
So which way
how to navigate.
Yeah.
So if he dies, you lose that. But he's also holding closed the webway portal on Earth. And if he dies, that door opens, and then you get a massive demon incursion. So
yeah.
And although they need psychers can also cause a demonic incursion as well. So the Imperium, like you were saying, the Imperium exists out of circumstance as much as it exists out of.
It sounds like a galactic empire. It's without it, the universe collapses. And when there's a greater enemy that threatens all of humanity, do you need that lesser evil there to do it?
Uniting force to at least something that can galvanize the populace.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's not as clear cut. Although I really hope our words don't get taken out of context. Like when the Emperor appears in real life on planet Earth, we're like, we did not predict this. Okay, we don't stand for this.
Told you, Henry, he's here. He walks among us.
Sauron wasn't wrong, okay? Neither was Thanos.
Make Mordor great again.
Yeah. Oh my god. Do you know what was the funniest thing? That was the funniest thing Josh told me about Sauron. So he's a metal artist, but he's also a pipe weed dealer.
No, not Sauron. What's his name? Saruman.
Oh yeah.
In one of the extra books, what he does to basically manipulate the hobbits is that he sells pipe weed to them, and then he gets at one period. I think this is after Lord of the Rings, because in the books, he doesn't die during the Lord of the Rings period. He's upset and angry that the hobbits have bested his plans. So he basically,
as he would be,
so he's basically sending like pipe weed to the Shire, so then he could then like control them because they then become addicted to it. So then he can then manipulate them and then use that to then take over the Shire to destroy it and then get his revenge after being bested from it.
Effectively like the British did with opium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chinese.
Exactly. It's
You're
all
not going to
based
buy
on
our drugs? We're going to fight a war, and then I'm going to make you buy our drugs.
Exactly. It's all based on that history. And this is why I love science fiction and fantasy, because, you know, it's an escape from reality, but you can see so many influences from real life, from history that come through. And unfortunately, just like history, so will this episode be in a few minutes, because we're done. I've got to say, it's been emotional.
Just quickly, one last question.
Go on.
One last question, because like I've used to watch like the Shannara Chronicles. It was like a show that would show on television, and like it would have a futuristic world where it had orcs, it had ogres, it had elves in it as well. It had people who had magic as well. And they were saying the reason all of that could happen was because nuclear bombs had taken off, and people had the actual radiation had turned some people to be elvish. It'd given people magic. It had turned people into ogres and orcs and other beings like that. Had created monsters as well, so you could have like a crocodile that's turned into a dragon now after thousands of years of being in the radiation. Like, how do like? And there's also like sci-fi that I know, and also fantasy that I know, that they say that gods are created based on human consciousness, that the human consciousness then creates the gods that they then worship and then also intervene on their behalf. So then how do like the chaos gods come into it? Like, how do the elves and orcs come into it if it's like made in the universe, which is kind of like our universe where Earth exists? So were the elves already there?
Yeah.
Or were they like mutilated?
The Eldari, the Eldar, as they were called in the old money, they had a space empire that predated. They still exist, but they're, again, grimdark. There are few of them left, and they're on a downward trend. But and one of the great things is they refer to humanity as the Monkey, the monkeys, because they see us as a lesser form of life. And in some respects, they're right, or in many respects. But they had a spacefaring empire that predated it. Then they had their
Pinnacle.
and they brought Slanesh in, and that triggered a cataclysm in their society, and it all fell apart from there. The orcs were created. I mean, now we're talking like the lore, the expanded lore. So the orcs were created by the old ones to fight as a big space enemy, and they were created because they're resistant to the warp.
Okay.
They multiply very quickly. They're basically multiplied through fungus. They are fungus, and they spread spores, which then grow into orcs. And the more they fight, the bigger they get. They can technology they create through latent psychic energy that they don't understand or they don't know about. They literally think so. There's a joke that if you point your fingers at an orc, go bang, it'll fall over and die because it thinks you shot it.
Yeah, that's psychic, as we said. Yeah.
The chaos gods, like they are again, they coalesced from human emotions. They've been around a long, long time. And the Emperor made
some more than others, like Slanesh is the youngest, but the first one was Khorne. That is the oldest Chaos God. Then it was... then it was Nurgle. And basically, when each one of these gods was born, it affected Earth in some way. So I don't know what happened with Khorne, but when Nurgle was born, the god of plague and pestilence, that's when we had the Black Death. In like the 13th century, the Black Death, the bubonic plague, etc. in Europe. I don't know if that was the 12th century or 13th century. But
you're right. And funnily enough, people think that it was the Mongols who brought it in. Because when at the same time period you had Genghis Khan sent out the Mongol hordes out of Mongolia, out of China, all the way to the west, and they're thinking that they brought the disease from because everyone said it came from the east. They brought the disease with them. And because they'd gone through so many different lands, it then picked up and then mutated and then carried through all the way up until to parts of the rest of Europe.
Okay, interesting.
But that's not right, though, because it came from the birth of the god of pestilence, Nurgle. Nothing to do with that. So going back to your question about how the Chaos Gods interact with that being fed on emotions. So, the fear of death, that is what feeds Nurgle, because Nurgle comes to you on your deathbed and says, I can make you live forever. All you must do is accept my gift. And, your body becomes horribly mutated, but you just don't die. incredibly resistant and resilient.
Or potentially with Khorne, like you're about to go into a battle, you're fretting, scared you're going to lose. He comes to see you and says, I can mutate you to make you stronger, that you survive and you win the battle.
Exactly, and this is how the gods get their power, from people's wishes and dreams like that.
Yeah, I was going to say Khorne doesn't quite work that way. It's because Khorne doesn't beg. It's like if you are enraged or you
it's more
seek
emotional.
revenge, you will become a champion of Khorne if you are worthy. But he's also got a lot of honor. Like he's the god of like battle pride. But I mean, the thing is, I tried to sort of explain before, the lore for each of these factions is huge. There's some we haven't spoken about. So you've got the Eldar, but you've got the Dark Eldar that's split off. And they literally have to stop themselves being consumed by Slanesh. They literally have created a society around torture, murder, and rape. And they do that to stop Slanesh. Oh, they love it. They absolutely love it. Wow. But they're incidentally the strongest faction in the game. They have the best technology.
But they live, feed off,
They live in the warp, not in the warp, in the webway, the Eldar webway, in like a secret closed-off bit in a city called Comera. But they literally torture, rape, and murder.
But it's got to a point that they have to do that to feed their life force.
Oh,
don't
they love it. That's the
yeah.
grim, dark reality of it. They have to do it.
Yeah.
So if the Emperor got humanity not to feel at all, would the Chaos Gods lose their power? Or is it already too late?
It would seal them off. It's already too late, and that's the grim dark.
Yeah.
So Warhammer 40,000 is about this slow decay of humanity, of it just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. His plan was that they wouldn't need to use the warp anymore. He would get rid of the Psychers, because Psychers draw their power from the warp, but they can also be conduits for demonic possession, invasions, etc. His plan was basically to weed humanity off,